Letters 31A, 31B.
See, I always start. When someone asks me my age, I always go like 75, and they're like, "How do you do it?" And I'm like, eat right, live right, that kind of thing.
Practice.
If you say you're 30, they're like, "What happened, man?" Like it's hard. So like, why would you shoot low? You got to shoot high. You got to manage
Say
people's
live right,
expectations.
but then there's that black blues musician in Mississippi. He's 109 and he's been
Yeah.
smoking cigars and drinking straight hooch.
Or
Yeah,
I tell
exactly.
them I'm level 51 now, so you can't even mess with me because I'm
Right.
level 51. I
Level
get extra
51. There you
lives.
go.
Extra
I like
ability.
that.
Right.
Welcome in. The water's fine.
I feel so left out. I've been getting told that I look in mid-30s since I was 28. That's quarter of a century ago.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you might see a little link down there. You can join the conversation in Zoom. If you are in Zoom and you're looking at all these panelists here and trying to figure out how do I become that, and you're listening to us and think you might have something to add to our conversation, that you might know something that we don't, you might. And we'd love to have you come in. You just got to be here by 6:40 Pacific Standard Time. 6 o'clock, we open the doors, and I can't promise anything. We talk about all kinds of stuff. But we kind of have coffee. We have tea. Sometimes it's techie. Sometimes it's fun. But sometimes it gets really deep. Like this morning got pretty deep. I would definitely suggest trying it out and coming in early. At 7 o'clock, we then start the Q&A. And the thing to know about this is that unlike other shows that actually spend time planning their show and thinking of a run of show, we depend on you. So if you're watching this and you're running our show, all you have to do is ask questions and vote on them. So you'll see a link. If you're new to Zoom, you'll see a link to Makana. And once you're in Makana, it's your job to ask questions and to vote those questions up and down. Best thing to do is think about them all day. If something comes up that's tickling your brain, you can't quite figure out how this works or why it works. It doesn't even have to be something you're trying to fix. It can be something you just don't understand. You can write that down somewhere and then bring it in and help us build this show by asking your questions. Now, normally we have second hours that are specific, but this week we're taking a little bit of a break and just doing general Q&A. We'll pick up on the more specific stuff next week. And also we have a bonus hour next week. Remember the Apple launch. We will be doing the second ear experience, quote unquote, which is that we will all be talking while watching the show. We're not playing the show through Zoom. We can watch it on our own, but this will be a clean audio feed of us just discussing it. So it's usually a mixture of talking about what they're announcing and then talking about how they're announcing it. So there's a lot of picking at audio and video and framing and process and everything else. So it's a slightly different show than just talking about the content itself. So that'll be at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Pacific. Is it Standard Time now or is it Daylight Saving? I don't understand how any of these things work. So I just say
Standard.
Pacific Time. Pacific Time.
Yeah, it's
okay. Pacific
uncorrected
Standard Time.
Pacific time.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, so I just in case you're wondering, I hate time changes. Anyway, I think I could be a single issue voter. Now that we're over the voting, I can say it. If someone said I'm getting rid of the of Pacific Standard and Daylight Savings, I would be like that person. I need to vote on that person.
Single biggest negative of moving from Phoenix, Scottsdale to California was that.
Yeah, exactly.
Number
So
one.
if you want to invite other people, you can. I'm going to give you the link there. The link is in Mukana. It's better than using your own link because then people don't come in as you. So let's go ahead, Bill. Let's jump into the questions.
Sure. Jeffrey Powers, panelist extraordinaire from Madison, Wisconsin, says looking for a 2-axis slider that can be placed on the ceiling to easily move an overhead camera around. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, my initial thought is that pretty much any camera slider that's track based can be put on the ceiling as long as you've got a cage on the camera, so you can put it in reverse. Anyone else?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Well, I noticed that Jeffrey asked for 2-axis. So in other words, he doesn't just want to move it across the room, he wants to move it backward and forward. At which point, I don't think they're actually called sliders, they'd be called an overhead railway.
You're breaking up a little bit. Your audio's breaking up, Stuart. Mickey?
Yeah, I've seen people essentially put a Dana dolly on another Dana dolly, so you get 2 axes. But I haven't seen it used up high. People I've seen people use it at on the ground level.
Go ahead,
But
Jeffrey.
that shouldn't work.
Yeah, the whole idea is I have this overhead camera right here, and every now and then I have to move. I move my stuff so I can do a different type of setup. It'd be nice to go up here and just go like that, and then move it over just a little bit. So it's not as much of a two access because it is, but I'm hoping it's like more multi-access, like in football they have those little cameras that go on the two cables
Cable
back
cam.
and forth on.
That's what you
Yeah.
need for your house is a cable cam.
Exactly. So
There's-
if there's a cheap one there, that'd be great.
I've seen some built for not so much overhead, but in front. Like with a lot of 80/20. Where they've built kind of a system that goes back and forth and up and down. I haven't seen anything that you can just kind of grab and move to a position. Go ahead, Bill. I mean, other than a jib, like a jib is pretty useful for that. You kind of the one that the group of products that I'd probably take a look at is Kessler Crane. KesslerCrane.com has a lot of great solutions in the area of jibs and dollies and motion control and so on and so forth. They've been around for a long time. Bill.
Yeah, I had that pretty complex, and I don't have a photo of it right next to me. IFF Studio rail system in my old studio, which has trucks and rails, and the rails are all on these little trucks. But I don't think I would consider any of that smooth enough to do live camera moves. It's great for positioning something in two axes.
But that might be all Jeffrey needs. It's not so much moving it, but just getting it to where he needs it quickly.
then
Yeah, and if I do need to move it on live, it doesn't matter if it bounces around for a couple seconds.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah,
Then I would highly recommend that. It came from IFF, which was the European version of Manfrotto or Bogan at the time, and it was called the Studio Rail System. It has an incredibly complex system of rails that you can fix, also rails that slide against those rails. I will look for a couple of minutes here and see if I can pick up a picture off my phone and show you what it looks like in installation. But it would do that exactly.
Yeah, the Studio Rail system looks actually like it could be pretty interesting. It looks like it's mostly built around lights, but I think
it is very much a lighting device system, but it has all sorts of components
like this.
Yeah, it's a very complex version of that, and you're looking at that. You have I'd call rails at 0 degrees, rails at 90 degrees. The 0 degrees rails can be fixed. The 90-degree rails can be moved back and forth on trucks. You can buy trucks that are free-flowing, or you can buy them that are braked and that have a little wire that you pull down with a hooked pole from the ceiling to release it so it can be moved and set into a new place. It's a really good system. I mean, it was tremendously flexible when I had it in my studio for years.
Mickey and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's a big thing, like not having to do actual like smooth camera moves on it. Yeah, definitely like a grid system, a photo grid system would help, like as Bill mentioned. But also, check out the Manfrotto Magic Arms. Those could also help out depending on the weight, the kind of camera that you plan to mount up there.
Absolutely. Neil and then Brian.
Yeah, just a safety tip on what Bill was showing us. Those springs, when you start getting into like Studio 2Ks and 5Ks that will counterbalance that weight, they have enough tension in them to literally rip your fingers off when you're trying to clamp them down in the right position. Just a safety thing to watch out for.
Yeah,
I got my photos.
It's serious. It's a lot of tension.
Right.
I got my photos back up. So that's a look at the end. I have 3 of the rails in the overhead of my studio locked off. You can see on the right side of this photo that little metal clip that you can pull down to release the brake, so that rail, each end can be individually placed at an angle across the 2 master rails. In the far side, you're seeing a curtain rail. All those offsets from the ceiling down to give you a little extra space are possible. It is really the Tinker Toy set for moving lights around. You also see one of the nicest little things, those plastic clips that look like little ovals with a thing. Those are for cords. So as you light and do things like that, you put the lights on the spigots that are in the center, which are themselves on trucks, or you can put pantographs on those to do vertical and horizontal, or vertical positioning. But then the cables all have dressings so that your studio looks neat and you do not get cables on the floor, which is a huge safety plus.
Brian and then
How
Jeffrey.
much is that system?
Well, I probably spent maybe $2,500 to $3,000 putting in the basics, and then a couple more grand probably over the course of the days I was using my studio to continue to build it out. I got a pretty sophisticated rig before I was done, and I probably spent $5,000 or $6,000 on it back in would have been probably 93, 94. So whatever it's, I don't know if it's less expensive now because they're doing more of this kind of fabrication or more.
Brian?
So I've been looking at this actually the last week or so for a similar use case, and was wondering if the pantographs would be too heavy, too much overkill for something like a Blackmagic 6K. And you can get add-on springs. To Neil's point, you can get add-on springs so they'll do more weight. And so when you were talking about,
there's one of the pantographs. I don't know if you can see it, but the pantograph has a flat spring, and you can dial up or down the tension on it. I put things as lightweight as an Airy 300, so a pretty lightweight Fresnel lens lamp, and it'll go down that low. And this particular unit, a cool light fluorescent fixture, probably weighed, I'd say 11, 12 pounds, and it was fine. So yeah, it's a pretty flexible system. There's also a tension control on the amount of spring that the pantograph does, so you can lock it down or loosen it up as the weight determines.
Good, Brian.
So in looking at this, the weight load that these Manfrotto pantographs can carry I think about 20 pounds. I noticed on Adorama you can find one made by a company called Jinbei, Jinbei, that is a whole lot less money and lighter weight. So I didn't know if anyone had experience with that, if they have thoughts about buying a knockoff versus, a Manfrotto style arm. Any thoughts?
I don't think anybody. Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
Don't cheap out on gear that's over people's heads. Buy something that's
yeah.
all my gear for working at heights. It's like Petzl. I can trace back the lot number, the certification date. I know who tested it. It's like, you don't cheap on your safety gear because you're going to pay more in insurance.
And it's over my wife's head. So
I put up a quick picture of the wide shot of the studio as it was configured when it was in most of its use. And you can see it's just really flexible. You can actually get things like those seamless roll holders. There's just all sorts of accessories. Once you put up the rail system overhead, you have tons of flexibility.
That would be fun to do. For me, it's just going to be like a little small area. Then I mean, this is not for a regular studio, just my studio, but a lot of great ideas. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next question comes from Victor, also on the panel from Brookings, South Dakota. Alex, can you talk about how you've used the Zoom Share feature computer sound only when working with artists?
Well, I wouldn't use it. I don't know if I would use it now because I think the tools that when you set all the quality tools up within the input, I don't think you need it as much. But the way we've used it in the past is we've had their voice coming in. In the past, what we had was an issue where they needed to have high quality music, but that music was on another computer. It was there was different inputs that had to come in, and when we did that, we would have their music bedding or all of their music coming in through the computer sound. So they would mix everything down and pipe it into computer sound and ignore their regular audio, because even with original sound, we weren't getting full spectrum or close to full spectrum. Now with the tools with the I/O that's been added to Zoom, I don't think I would probably use the computer sound in the way that I did before. I think I would just use the what's available. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I ran some tests with SpectraFu on the normal original sound off, full music mode, and then with the computer share. And computer share was a 32 kilohertz sampling, whereas high fidelity music mode gives you a 48 kilohertz sampling. So you get fuller bandwidth with that.
Interesting. So it's really gotten to a point where it's it's actually better.
It's better. It was different, and it was better. And if you go in Discord in the Zoom and go back October 21st, I've got some screen grabs of the frequency response in the 3 modes.
That's great. There you go. Next question.
Stephen Kimbrough, also of the panel today, puts on his snarky hat a little. Okay, so how does this not go away like 3D? Is Dolby making the patents for the Atmos and other systems for this reasonable so that it's easy for everyone to build new equipment?
I think it's over. I mean, Apple has picked it. like I don't think they have to do anything. I don't think Dolby has to change anything at this point. You're gonna be doing what Apple's doing, or you're gonna be doing also ran. The pressure on the industry now is intense. No one's gonna remember HDR as like HDR10 is just gonna be another HLG. Like it's just gonna be an also ran, because it hasn't happened yet because those phones aren't out there yet. But I would fully expect a very hard PR push that Apple makes over next year for Dolby. So, because it sets them apart and it sets them ahead, and it's going to sell more phones. And so it is, I think that you're going to see all the Apple displays, the iPads already support Atmos, and it's kind of magical. If you listen to something that's Atmos, like go to a movie that's Atmos and watch it on your iPad, I don't even understand how that works. Like there's like iPad Pro, there's 4 speakers, and it just feels like things are around you. And I haven't quite figured out how they do that. So the thing is that the race, there's always this race where there's a whole bunch of competing factors, and Samsung and Sony want to have HDR10 plus be the thing, but HDR10 plus is harder to say than Vision, and you should not underestimate that. Like it's harder to understand. You want, in the same way that I don't really like doing production with open source software, you don't want things to be free. You want them to support themselves, and so I think that Dolby, having, there's some nominal costs for basic production. I mean, obviously Mickey's talked about there's high-end costs for cinema, but the future is not really cinema. It's everybody watching stuff and everybody being able to experience it. Now all these people have AirPod Pros. It doesn't take very much for you to develop content, for Atmos, and I actually think there'd be a business. I mean, I'll be interested to see if TikTok, adds the capability to, put surround into what you're doing, because it would be something that people would be looking for. So I think that everybody else has to follow through. I don't think the licensing is that, the licensing is what licensing looks like. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what the Dolby license is. I bet it's just a couple dollars a TV or something like that. So to put it in there, but I don't know what the number is. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, because looking at like the home theater, whole marketplace, so Onkyo and those folks, for them to come into it, smartly, correctly.
Well, most of them already, Denon and a lot of those are already, I mean, I don't think you can sell an AVR without Dolby support. I don't think anyone's going to, they have so much brand awareness that, I know Sony's playing around with this, like, whatever, 360, whatever, capture, they have some little 360 thing, but no one, I haven't seen an AVR. I see AVRs that don't support Atmos necessarily, but I don't see any AVRs that don't support Dolby 5.1 or whatever. That would be crazy.
Sony's license fee is unbelievable, though. They want like $5 for an under $1,000 unit. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are, but I think that at this point, Dolby's, we don't think about, people who are thinking about surround don't really think about things other than that. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely. Every AVR now that you can buy for sure has at the minimum Dolby Digital and Dolby Digital Plus, so AC3 and EAC3 support. And anything right now that can have a Netflix app can decode Dolby Digital. So it's just a matter of time until everything can support AC4, which carries Atmos.
Yeah. So I think that the penetration is pretty deep at this point. So I think it's a lot further along than 3D was. And the thing that Stuart probably is pointing to in the chat room is that 3D is still coming, but in VR. Like it's all the stuff we figured out how to do in 3D is just being repurposed for VR now. So that's still a slow burning fuse, but I don't think VR is going away. I think it's just not mature yet. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm just going to make a artistic statement. Conversion is not 3D. Shoot it in 2 cameras or don't do it at all.
Yep. No, I agree. Next question.
Felipe of the panel, I don't know, he may have dropped out of the panel. He was here earlier. Has a request for Mickey. Would you be so kind as to show us the audio hijack session you have running in the background and give us a quick overview?
Sure. I think we went through this like a month or two ago. But yeah, let me just share this.
Obviously, Felipe hasn't watched every single one of our episodes, and so he's.
We should record this, and then every time somebody asks this question, we just hit the play button.
All right. So yeah. I'm a little distant from the mic now, but yeah. So here I have my audio hijack routing here. So this is where Zoom comes in. This chain is going out to the Mukana stream. This is Zoom coming in. I have a little volume fader here, and this is a multi-band compressor that's taking care of cleaning up some harshness and some boominess, and then that's going into just a plain old compressor, light, very very light there. I think on the average I'm just doing 2 dB of noise reduction, of gain reduction there. And then that's going into another multi-band compressor just to smoothen things out. And that is going into a limiter, which is on another screen, this thing. And that's bringing up the overall loudness. And my goal for the Mukana stream is to hit -16 LUFS. So it looks like here the long term so far has been -16 LUFS. And that's going out into this meter and then going out to the Mukana stream. And then this one is just a way for me to quickly listen back to what I'm sending out. And then here is just like pre-show. I typically play out some music, Victor's nice album, and this is my main fader for sending that out. And then this one is just this volume fader is just to make sure that even if I'm playing out like 100% here, it never goes over Zoom's level. So I have a full resolution fader here that no matter what I do won't go over this. And that's going out to the same limiter and the same chain afterwards. And this is the meter chain that we're using. Right now, these are the gain boosts that I was using to experiment with, but now it's disabled. So right now it's just Zoom going straight to this WLM that everyone's seeing. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Simple. Yeah, well, and it's it sounds really good. If you haven't listened to the Mukana, stream when you turn it on your phone or whatever, I've listened to it a couple times when I haven't been here, and it's just crystal clear. And it's obviously a mixture of everyone here doing a good job of their mics, which is why we do the mic checks, but Mickey also doing a great job at cleaning all of that up. That chain has been magical. So, so I'm one of the things that I am hoping to do by the end of the year, and I think I will be able to, is get this into a podcast form so that people can just listen to it. You can just listen to us talk about this stuff. But I think that what I want to do is get Mickey to record the other end of his chain, not the raw end of our chain. I think it wouldn't do justice to the show. So that's probably coming out probably within a couple weeks. I'm now a little bit more flexible, so for the moment, and so I'm going to try to get some of that distribution out so that you can just subscribe to it and listen to that in the morning if you want to. If you don't make it here, anyway. Next question.
Oh, hit the wrong button here. I needed to actually do that one, and that's Rachel Ann Clifton says, we warm up our voices. How are sound engineers warming their ears for sound? Are they? Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't really think of it like of myself like warming up for mixing, but I as I set up for the day, like when I get to the studio, I play playback music. I don't really think of it as warming up, but it's sort of anchoring my hearing to something I'm accustomed to. So I get used to the playback system, the monitoring system.
Yep. Jeff, and then Jason.
So I think of that more as making myself accustomed to either, like Mickey said, a system that I'm familiar with and just remembering what things sound like, or a brand new system. So if I'm going in to mix something, a PA, or if I'm in a room and I've set up some portable speakers, I want to hear what they sound like. So I just have a playlist, sort of a sound check playlist, a bunch of things. I actually always start with, it's an old Stephen Foster tune, Hard Times Come Again No More, with Yo-Yo Ma and Edgar Meyer, and James Taylor is singing on it. And if James Taylor sounds like James Taylor, then the mids of that particular sound system are translating well.
That's good. Jason?
I am hardly an audio engineer, but I guess I'll throw in my 2 cents here. There are specific classical pieces where I try to listen for the triangle, which is just an extremely precise frequency. And I find that helps sometimes.
For me, the piece of music I probably listen to more than any other in my entire life is Appalachian Spring, and I can play it as a reference. Like I can hear, there's all kinds of different instruments and things and everything else that I can listen to, and if I don't hear those, I think that there's some mud somewhere or some, and it has to be. I mean, it depends on the recordings too. I've recently found a better recording because I think I had some noise in some of the ones that I've been listening to previously, but in a really good sound system, I can hear a lot of bits and pieces of it, and so that's probably the resolution that I tend to reference to of how something sounds. You'll see me always, if I'm testing a new system, you'll always see me throw on Appalachian Spring and listen to it, just because I know what it sounds. This gets back to what we all said, is that there's a piece of music that we all know, and we know what it should sound like, and we've listened to it often enough that we can error correct in our head or physically error correct for it, because we know what it should sound like. And so I think that reference point for everyone, whether it's video or audio, I have the same thing when we do tests with, like, for instance, with HDR, there are scenes that we know what they should look like, and we play them through okay, now we're going to test it. Let's play that through the system, because our eyes are all tuned to watch to make sure this doesn't posterize, watch the blacks over here, watch the whites over here. And so in the same way, you want to kind of have a piece of music that you use as music or video that you use as a reference, for that process. As far as what I will say, the other thing that I do is tune my ear a lot, which is, we were talking about it before the show. We have a room right now that, because of the work we're doing, that's Atmos capable as well as Vision capable. And I watch the end of my day, before I leave, I tend to, when everyone else is gone from the office, so I don't make everything shake, I turn it up and I watch scenes that I think would be good in Vision and Atmos, and I just see what they did with it. And some of them are, kind of a happy accident, or they're really nice, and some of them are a disappointment. But I'm listening for, I'm not just watching the movie. I've seen most of these many times. I'm actively listening to, okay, they put that sound effect over here, they put that, and I'm just trying to learn from the engineers by listening to what they're doing with it. Go ahead, Jeff, and then Bill.
The title of the album, that track that I mentioned, is Appalachian Journey. So we seem to have an Appalachian theme going on.
That's great. Bill?
Can you put that in Makana, Jeff, please?
For me, I am nowhere near the audio engineer that people hear, and in fact, I'm no kind at all. I do not have a degree in that. But the thing is, I spent so much time doing content and creating content that I early on really migrated towards a particular set of headphones. In my case, they're pretty ubiquitous, the Sony 7506s. They are not accurate. That's not, for me, that's not their job. They actually have a pretty pronounced kind of presence peak, I think, in the human voice thing. And that's what I use them for. I use them in the field constantly to listen to what people are saying, because I'm doing audio for video, and the people talking are usually carrying most of the information that's critical for my audience to hear. So in using those for 15 years and never switching to anything else, I've learned how they are supposed to sound. And when I get good results, I can kind of reference that back to what I heard when I was monitoring in the field and know if they're working for my purpose. So that's been my path. Get your equipment. If it works for you, learn it, and then don't use anything else, so that you're not trying to constantly find a different target.
And the one thing that I'll say, that one thing to add to this as you work is, we talked about it a little bit earlier, is to use scopes. So for audio and video, having scopes open is super useful, like a lot of scopes, because what will happen is as you listen to it, your brain is slowly connecting, it's just naturally connecting what the scope is looking like based on what you're hearing. And you'll be able to, I get to a point now because we've watched so many scopes for so many events. I can look across the room at 20 different screens that are scopes for all of my different, let's say 20 rooms. We don't have that anymore, but when we had lots of rooms, and my eye will naturally just go to the one that has problems. Like it's, like I can just do a blank stare over there and go, okay, the audio's low on that one, or there's a buzz on that one. But it's because my brain has connected all of that together. And so having scopes open, and that can be Scope Box and Spectre or Spectre Foo, any of those things, having them open on a laptop or whatever while you're working is just a great way to organically connect your brain to an audio stimulus system. Jeffrey, and then Sky, and then John.
One thing to remember is, and I posted the Appalachian Spring. It's a YouTube video on that with the score and everything like that, which brings me my point. If you're going to do this, I know the panel knows this, but the audience might think, oh, I'll just go to YouTube and pull that up. YouTube's compressed. It's not going to have the best sounds off of there. The best thing to do is to have audio in something like a FLAC or original source, so high quality, so you can do that. And you got to determine whether it's stereo or mono that when you're doing any type of tuning.
Yeah. Good, Sky. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, Sky.
Yeah, kind of to Jeffrey's point of as we're learning to tune our taste buds, whether they're earbuds or ear, but walking into a Best Buy, which you still can do, you look up on the video wall, and the oversaturation of the color is to sell you the highest candy, contrast. So, Alex, as you're talking about vision and the depth of color that Dolby is bringing, could you do a quick? If I walk into a Best Buy and look at all of these different monitors, they overcrank to attract you to buy their TV. I guess. Are we listening? Are we watching for? What are we watching for? What's?
I don't know. I think reviews. You're not gonna. You can go look at something at Best Buy, but you have to get.
If we don't understand scopes, maybe that's it.
But I'm saying with you, the scopes is just something you do while you're working. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I have them open all the time, and you just have them kind of constantly. You're just constantly looking at them as you're. If I don't have anything else to look at, I'm looking at those. If I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at in a image, I open up scopes, but I open up scopes all the time against everything, all the time. Because it's just it's useful. Like to because and then you'll learn what you're figuring out. Like I can watch people for some of the stuff that I have. I'm not a colorist, and so I'll have our colorist jump in and do some correction over TeamViewer and just make some corrections, and he's looking at the scopes, and me watching him look at the scopes while I'm looking at the scopes and him making adjustments is useful too. So I learn what that tool does and how it's affecting the image. Oh, by the way, a little interruption, partially because we're running, we're for the time frame that we have and the amount of time we have, we don't have enough questions. So if you have other questions, this is a good time to add those questions to keep the show going, or it'll be a shorter show, which is okay. But I thought I'd do a little interruption. I did get when we're speaking about this, I got the Shaman disc that I was talking about. I just want to play a couple of them for you, just so you guys can hear the what I've been talking about here. So let's see, share computer sound. So this is the song is just. It's that but this is the part that that's it. So these are just samples.
I can move any mountain.
Sorry, I can't. So anyway, I don't have any control over the audio from here. I don't think. Anyway, So it's a song that they took completely and broke up into its own samples. So, and sorry it was so loud. I don't think I have any control over that on computer. I guess I could have in iTunes. I apologize for that. So everyone's deaf now. So anyway, but the I haven't. It was funny as I haven't opened iTunes for I don't know how long. Like music, I don't use the iTunes app at all, and so I realized that I don't even know how to use it anymore. I just it just happened. I put a CD in because it came on a CD. So I had then I had to find a CD player in the house, like a CD. My wife fortunately gets sermons on the on CD, so she has them laying around. So I was able to digitize it into the system. Victor, yeah, I can't hear you.
Sorry, the new live loops feature in Logic Pro X will be exactly what you need for those samples. So look into a couple of tutorials of how to use the new live loops, because you'll be able to just trigger those live in any way, shape, or form in the form of a song. Check it out. You'll love it.
Yeah, my little experiment with it is, I want to obviously put the song together, but then I want to try to put it into Atmos, so I just want to kind of play around with putting the song, because I have the speakers and everything else, I want to play with like what would it sound like if I put it in. The other thing I'm going to talk to Victor about and challenge Victor on is I want to compose some ambient music that we can use for like between shows, like when we have slides up and everything else, but in Atmos, so have it all, just these kind of quiet little things that are just, yeah, Mickey's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking. I think that, now that I have to produce this stuff, the one thing that we got into, is if you have a slide up that says coming up next, what do you do? Like what music do you do? And I realize we have to compose some music that will just be ambient and atmospheric and come around, all around and everything else. And so
let me know. I have some wonderful stuff to do that. There's a program called Spectrasonics that is just perfect for that. So you let me know and we'll do some stuff.
All right, sounds good. Jeffrey and then Stuart.
I want to be part of that, Victor, just so you know. But the other thing is and I was trying to find the name of the album. There's a couple albums out there that do nothing but different types of sound frequency, that does white noise. It'll do left channel, right channel, and stuff like that. It's once I find it, I'll put it in the link in the notes so you guys have that.
Absolutely. Stuart and then John.
I'm also about to find a link and put it in for a artist by the name of Eric Matthias, who has been posting free music of atmospheric nature for about a decade. I found him on the Pentax forum of all places. There was something else. Where we were talking about audio and my audio broke up before, just watching in the chat, a few of us got kicked out of Zoom all at the same time. So there might be something going on with the internet being busy today.
I think there's something going on with
Zoom.
It
could be something in the news.
We've seen, this is what we were going to, and we have to file some reports for Zoom, but we're seeing these random, like a whole bunch of people get pushed out of our thing at one time in Zoom. And we can't quite put our finger on it, but it's been something that a bunch of people drop all at one time. Not everybody. It's always like, it's some smaller percentage, and we haven't quite figured out what's going on. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say there's some fun things out there with audio illusions, just like optical illusions. So there are some things that you can trick your brain with audio illusions. It'd be fun to play with that in Atmos.
If you haven't, I think I'm not going to play it here, but the power of suggestion is quite a thing. There's a comedian, an English comedian, that does misunderstanding lyrics. If you just do misunderstanding lyrics stand up, and what he does is he tells you what he thought, or what he quote unquote thought that they said, and you can't unhear it. Like he'll say, and it's a song. He didn't change anything, but he suggests it, and then he plays it, and you can't not hear them saying that thing. It's a very, I find it's funny, but it's psychologically really, really interesting that you can.
It's amazing. Yeah. And then you could have things where tones are going up, but you think they're going down, Esser steps. It's amazing. The other thing that talk about what was your go-to music, I realized mine was the Leonard Bernstein Grand Canyon Suite, and the other was the Live Hotel California. I'm trying to figure out what that says about me.
Yeah. On the dark desert mule train.
Next question.
Okay. Sky Gleason is back with that one that I messed up earlier. And the question is, for collaborative video editing, what's a good cloud storage solution for multiple editors in different locations? Are there other cloud solutions other than Dropbox?
Well, Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just wondering, because a lot of people think cloud storage solution, multiple editors. Are you trying to have multiple people touch the same files, or are you just trying to pass around files so that multiple people can help advance a project? They're two different total approaches.
Well, I've worked in a facility that had a centralized storage, and of course, file management is a challenge of training people where to put things and how to put them back, and that's one challenge. The other challenge is just only having that piece of media in one place. And I know we often will use Premiere, and the media is local, but the project is in the cloud. So that way in Spokane, my producer can be looking at stuff. In Bellevue, my executive can be looking at stuff. And so I'm trying to find a centralized storage, because we're starting to expand, and I'm trying to manage my media.
Yeah, looking at stuff is pretty easy, because things like Frame.io will let everybody look at it and make notes about it.
Which I love that solution.
Actually touch the files and work on them. I think the guy that I know who's been doing the most with that is Michael Camus of, now he's with Bebop. He was for many years with Keycode Media. I think they're spending a lot of time trying to work out a actual multiple editors touching a cloud-based project in real time. But I haven't talked to Michael in a while, and I don't know.
Ironically, you should mention Keycode. So, Alex, would you be interested in having Michael Cavanaugh join us?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, he and I talked. He called me the other day. Anyway, we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk. I'd love to have one. Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
Stuart.
It's not exactly what Sky is asking for, but I'm putting a link in the chat for a company that file sharing like Dropbox and Google. Only in my personal experience, and this is not an endorsement, they seem to be a faster connection. The downloads are stupidly fast in comparison to other competitors.
Yeah, I will say that.
And the price point too is, I mean, the Dropbox is pretty.
Yeah, the price point,
reasonable.
and you get more space if you share and
That's
tell
where we're
them
getting-
that you've shared the thing.
Yeah, we're moving into that, so that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to admit that after this last project of using lots of different transports, we're not doing anything other than Frame.io. like I am done. Like I am done. Not interested. I'm getting rid of all my other connections. I'm not like I had not used Frame.io transfer, and Frame.io transfer, to your point, sets up multiple connections all at one time. I mean, it just saturates the line. Like it just, so you have to be careful because, with your IT. But when you hit Frame.io, I have never seen anything, I mean, other than like Aspera, I haven't seen anything else do that kind of speed. And so moving, I uploaded yesterday. I mean, I have a good connection, but even then it depends on what Dropbox would do and whether it could handle a large file. I took a bunch of ProRes files and probably 120 gigs of data, and just threw it up there, and like a half an hour later, it was there, and it was, and it's in a nice little folder, and I can invite someone to it, and I think that Frame.io is winning this in a big way. I think that, and then it integrates with all the other project management stuff that you're doing. So I think that they're way ahead.
Well,
Neil?
and as I work with Terry over at LumaFusion, I'm also wanting to understand what is our cloud-based solution for video editing on an iOS. So,
yeah.
The other thing about Frame is that they spent a huge amount of, I think, their second round of VC financing on security. I don't think there's a more secure pipeline top to bottom. They did that because they thought they were going to be, and I think they are succeeding with it, working with the big Hollywood players who literally cannot have something from a Marvel movie or something like that get outside their ecosystem. So they're really good at security.
I'll take a holiday pricing. If there's a Black Friday opportunity, I'll jump on it.
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
Working at Google, I have the luxury of having unlimited storage for free. But and what we're using with Sky. But what we are using is actually Google Drive, and we created a shared drive that gives you the ability to have 5 different levels: manager, content manager, contributor, commenter, and viewer. And if you use Google File Stream desktop app, you can have that folder sitting right on your desktop, and you can choose where you want the actually folder to sync the files on your computer. And what I've been doing is actually telling Adobe in all of our team projects that we've been doing is pointing all of the proxies to that folder. And then people can choose to download the proxies, get those real fast and be able to edit super quick, and then choose to download the original files as well. It gives you the flexibility to choose what folders you want physically on your computer without adjusting anyone else's thing. But if someone deletes a file from that shared drive, it's gone from all of them. So you got to have a backup.
Yeah, so there's that. I definitely wouldn't have my only copy in the cloud. I guess that'd be how I do it. One thing that I wish
we do that anyway. I mean, for redundancy, you have backups in a separate physical space. So I would say
the one thing that I would the one thing I would love to see with Resolve, I mean, with a lot of things, but Resolve does so many different things. What I really wish is that they would create modularity between the different tools. So you have the edit tool, you have the conform tool, you have the Fairlight tool, you have the color tool. And right now what we have to do is we have to send a project to it, so my colorist will sit there and color it in Minneapolis and then sends me the file. And then I have to, I can't do anything. I have to literally stop editing until he's done. Right. So then I can go back to what I was doing. Theoretically, you could end up with people being able to open the fusion areas, the Fairlight areas, all those areas should be a separate thing that people could be saving to. And you can do that. You can have collaborative workflow in the same premise right now. Like that works but you can't, what I want to do is have I can choose to only save updates to that one area, and it would be complicated to do because there's things people could do that would make that difficult.
Well, I know that they're working on that. And of course, the irony, of course, is they've taken all those disparate, separate things and bundled them under one umbrella.
Well, it still makes sense. It still makes sense though, because, I want the edit to be, if I save the edit, I want it to show up over at my colorist, just have them see it change, but not change, and if it invalidates something they did, then it says that, like it goes red and goes, you need to change, you need to fix this. These are all the things that have been added since the last time you did it. But it's, and same thing with with audio. I mean, the audio, I don't think Fairlight is ready to replace Pro Tools, as far as what it can do. But I think that it's but being able to get to a point where we do that would be useful. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I know with the Resolve, it's possible to do changes in terms of you can import a new EDL, but it's not something instant as you're wanting.
Right. Yeah. So anyway,
and I know Premiere has worked on this, and they've done cloud-based solutions, but it was like a $80,000 install in a space that everybody would tie into specifically. So that was more of an enterprise solution. So
and I have to admit that from my experience has mostly been that we spend more time futzing with what broke when we start trying to do collaborative work on the same file.
Yes.
There's more there. You end up tracking down more things that got screwed up rather than a proper workflow of just saying okay, we'll break this. This is a really big show, so we're going to break it into reels. And then you have different people working on the reels. Yep. Or you have different sections or people, it's figuring out the proper workflow between apps, I think tends to be better than trying to have everybody talk to the same app. It's dangerous, and so I find that it's not that it never works. It's just that it breaks often enough. And then when it breaks, you've got all kinds of problems. You've got sync issues and things blowing up. And
I'm to that point in this production of what we're building here in my world, and that you're helping. I guess I am looking for better questions. And so I think you just nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we used to have, I mean, there is this part, this is what I was talking about with Resolve is, so when I was at ILM, the way it worked 25 years ago, I have no idea how it works now, is you'd have people working on texture maps for a character, let's say Jar Jar. You pick people working on the color of Jar Jar's ears. Then you'd have someone working on his animation. You'd have somebody else working on the rigging, how the body parts move and everything else. Someone else is working on the model of him. Someone else is working on the background objects and lighting and the scene. Someone else is working on the rendering and the compositing of other elements inside of it. All of that was in a pipeline, and there could be 30 or 40 people working on one shot. When you hit render, the render system, woke up and said, give me the newest model with the newest animation, with the newest rig, with the newest textures, with the newest, I'm just going to grab the newest of everything and spit out frames. Now, that worked pretty well, and you did put up with the thing. The funny things was there'd be an animation or something or a rig that no longer worked with the animation, and then Jar Jar's ears would go woo, like just start spinning around and like be bouncing around and all kinds of stuff because something broke, in that, because no one person saw a final frame until it came out the other end for dailies, and so anyway, it was so it was just you just worked on the piece that you were working on, and so that was all different apps, but they're all tied together with scripts. So they were all, pulled together. But I think that you could get to a point where you did some of that inside of an app that is as big as Resolve, to make that work. Go ahead, Bill.
For me, one of the biggest aha moments was realizing when I started adopting Final Cut 10, it broke a lot of things, and people didn't like it because it wasn't a track-based system. Tracks allow you to talk back and forth between a lot of things that understand tracks. When you break that, you can't talk. But on the other side, you get these efficiencies that can drive amazing quick results because you're no longer tied to the old paradigm. For me, that's the magnetic attachments where I can build structures and move them as blocks. And when I'm trying to close a client, the ability to be agile and make changes and refine and get them back revisions really fast makes me more money in my kind of practice than does the idea that I'm going to fit into a larger group of people. So the question is, are these different approaches, is constraining everybody to say that collaboration is what video editing needs going to slow down the ability to rethink and make more efficient the tools for those who don't need collaboration? And it's an ongoing tension.
I think that I'm definitely, after the last couple months, very much in there's the whole bunch of stuff that I would still do in Final Cut. Like I don't, but there is a deliberative level of work that I feel like I need to do in Resolve, and so I don't
understand that.
I'm not interested in Premiere or Avid or Media Composer. I don't think that I think those are kind of also RANs at this point in my mind. In my mind, it's Final Cut for fast and furious and getting things done quickly and producing those things and, speed. But when I have to, if I'm going to work on something for a month, and I'm going to slowly put all these pieces together, and I have to deal with, stuff like high dynamic range and complicated audio and, all the things that I've been working on recently, I think that would be very hard for me to do in Final Cut. Like I don't.
History of Resolve, though, it started out as a coloring suite, so it's got fabulous planetary class tools for that. Then they bolted on originally a low-grade editor, and then built that up to a contender, which is fabulous. But it's what you were talking about, Alex. They're two separate.
Yeah, but I definitely see myself as getting good at both of those, and then just saying this project belongs here and this project belongs here. And it's not doing all of it in Resolve would slow me down, and doing it all in Final Cut would limit me. So I think that I'm, now when it comes, and the same thing, like if I'm doing high-end compositing with motion blur specifically, I'm going to use After Effects because I still, After Effects is going to let me do things that I can't do in motion. If we're doing motion graphics, absolutely using motion. Like it's just so fast. I mean, watching like the number of revisions and that you can run over and get done in motion is 5 or 6 times faster than After Effects. And so it renders faster, it previews faster, you can set up behaviors and stuff that you just can't do as quickly or as easily in After Effects. And so in the same way, you just have to look for the right tool in the right place, for all of these things. Next question.
Thank you very much for that simple question. Answer.
Yeah, exactly.
So complex.
We have time. We have more time than usual. So we're less questions. We still we got some. So usually we'll wax on a little longer. We're always managing our time of how fast we can get through things. Anyway, next question.
Michael J. in New York City said, "Did you use the Atomos production and/or mastering suite in your summit presentation? If so, in what section?"
I can't get into what we did there yet. So, sorry. Next question.
Moving on. Jeff Francis from the panel in Columbia, South Carolina. If I were to invest in a Blackmagic design camera, which one? What lens? What other accessories? Live classical music concert streaming with ATEM Mini Pro. Need to zoom in from the back of a concert hall, 70 to 100 feet. Budget is decidedly not Alex level.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, you've basically just limited yourself to a pocket 6K and an extremely long lens. That's basically your only option.
Stuart?
Save longer and get the Ursa Mini G2.
Mickey?
Yeah, I would probably go with, instead of getting a camera with the EF sensor, I would probably go with the Micro Four Thirds if you need a throw that large, because it's gonna crop it, and that would help you in terms of not having to get like an extremely long lens. And yeah, in terms of lenses, you need for longer lenses. If you don't have really strong lighting, you'll be spending on the lens.
The one thing you'll have is you'll have less light sensitivity in the 4K than you have with the 6K. To Mickey's point, the crop factor might help you a little bit as far as that goes. If you get on a 2/3, on a Super 35 sensor, 75 Super 35 sensor, 75 feet is a 50 to 1,000. It's like the 51,000 Canon lens, which we would rent as opposed to buying, because the lens is $70,000. And so there's that. The typical things, but you can rent the lens for, I don't know, so you rent it for the show that you need. That still may turn out to be not as cost effective, but you need a long lens. Now, what you can do is get, Canon, the smaller 100 to 400s, put a doubler on it. You're going to start losing a lot of light, and you put that on a 4K, you're going to get in there. So a Canon like 1 to 400 with a doubler is going to get you pretty close over top with a Metabones converter to the 4/3. It's going to get you a long way. The problem with Super 35 also is that over 70 feet, your depth of field is so short when you zoom in that you're going to have a hard time managing focus. So we actually switch at about 75 feet is where we switch to 2/3 inch chips. So we tend to go to 2/3. That's one of the few places where I do that. Number one is it gives us a much better large lens selection. So now we can get box lenses. We can rent box lenses for 2/3 inch chips. There's lots of them, and there's lots of broadcast lenses, and they're cheap these days. For a lot of those things, maybe not to buy, but to rent. They're not very expensive because they've been around, they've been paid off, all that stuff. And so, like when we get into the 100-foot range, we're at that point we're looking at these Canon or Fuji 90X box lenses that we put a 2/3 inch chip on the back of them, and they do a pretty good job of a long throw. So, but in a budget, I would say a 1 to 400 with a doubler, a lot of light on the thing over top of a 4/3 inch, the 4K camera would probably get you the longest, the best long throw. Neil, and then Mickey.
I was actually gonna touch on what Mickey said about the Micro Four Thirds, because of its standard, you can choose different camera lenses and camera manufacturers, and also the price difference versus a full frame in terms of lenses. You're talking substantially less and a lot less weight, so you don't need as heavy of a tripod or as big of a head. So it just kind of brings down your overall cost if you can.
But on that throw,
that's the route you want to go.
On that throw, you're dealing with a pretty limited number of lenses that you can
True.
use. Yeah. Mickey, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I just want to add as well, like with those kinds of focal lengths, you need either a solid PED or a really, really good fluid head.
Yeah, that's the weight of the fluid head. I mean, on those throws, we're using typically 2575s, or 2575s, which are big, heavy heads. Stuart?
Yeah, I'll second the getting a decent head. It really makes a difference. But Alex, the Ursa Mini G2, I believe, is available in a B4 mount version. At what point would you swap to that?
He's got an A10 Mini.
The Super 35.
But he's got an A10 Mini. So if he's tying it into A10 Mini, it has to be. It limits you to the 4K and the 6K.
Isn't there a HDMI out on the G2?
Not that I know of. I think it's all STI. So, Bill?
Yeah, just I wanted to support that idea of look at broadcast lenses, don't look at any of the other classes, because with that much throw, not having the ability to do true broadcast slow creep zooms and things like that is really going to limit your operator ability. You really want that kind of traditional rocker zoom that is very sensitive.
We did one test for an event. We never actually used it for a variety of reasons, but we did do one with the Gearhead, and I got to tell you, amazing. Gearhead has got the little, dials. You usually use it in film, and we had one camera in the back.
I love the 3 wheels. I
And
love them.
well, the thing is it was when you could just see it when a really good fluid head operator can do this really well too. But when you see someone wandering around stage and there's just someone just cranking like this, and it's just this perfectly smooth back and forth. The problem is that you don't have all the other controls, and it didn't work. I mean, it was like, oh, this is not going to be viable. But it was, the move itself was beautiful. All the other logistics were not. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, as others have said, the amount that you're going to spend on tripods and glass is going to be pretty overwhelming. I'd also be looking at PTZs for this, if you could handle the image quality. And so, like the Bird Dog and some of the Panasonics with the larger chips are where I would go for that kind of reach, because, I mean, you're talking big money. I was just looking up while we were answering the questions at some of the Fujinon stuff that we carry. You're getting into the $40,000 range pretty quick. And so you can get multiple cameras and have them ready to go. And then with these joysticks.
And are those like 20x? 20x optical?
30x. Oh, yeah. And then you got, exposure. You got the ability to color. So I can change red, blue. I can focus. I got my zoom rocker. Because that's the other thing. Now you're getting Verizooms and you're getting things like that. Because I ran those cameras. I mean, you need a big monitor. You need a tally system. You need comms where, especially in this COVID area, I'd be looking at some kind of Panasonic, Bird Dog, Sony solution.
I will say that the Sony, my only experience is the Sony BRC 1000s, which are great cameras. I just haven't used them.
It's getting better and better. I mean, the Sonys were good a couple of years ago, but now Panasonic with the UE 150 and the Bird Dogs, the image with the 1-inch chips in 4K. I mean, it's stunning. It's stunning. So, I mean, as much as I'm a Blackmagic reseller, so I'd rather be saying go that route. But to be honest with you, I mean, I'd go PTZ. I'd at least see if you can get one in house and look at the image.
I agree that depending on the budget, I would test one of those to see whether they solve the problem. Sky, and then Brian, and then Neil.
Guy, how do you feel about is it the Huddle Cam? Has also a PTZ controller? Huddle?
A little small. Couldn't quite put it in there.
Sorry, dog just went around my. There's different levels of these controllers. Like this one's $1,800, and then some of them you don't get the fine control. Like this just feels gorgeous. Like we have a cheap one that was a Lumens one that was $500 that I'm using on Sundays at church. Man, it kills me. It's just like once you feel the good stuff, it's hard to go back to.
Here's the funny thing also that I think I mentioned before is that it turns out for PTZ operators, you're not looking for camera operators, you're looking for gamers. I had one. We were actually at a Google office and we were doing an event, and I noticed that I was like, how are we panning with there was a person that was pacing, and we had PTZs, but I never used the PTZs panning because I couldn't get anybody to do it smoothly. And so we was always just frame them and then frame them, and we'll cut around and reframe and everything else. And these are BRC 900s or whatever. And so I noticed that I was like, when did we put a camera operator back there? And I looked over, and my operator, who was a really heavy gamer, was sitting there just watching and doing it. And I was like, are you doing that with the joystick? And he goes, yeah, this is so much better than an Xbox controller. like it was just like this huge, powerful thing for him. And it was like, so his fine twitch, controls were way higher. When you bring a camera operator in, they just complain about the PTZ, and they don't, to them, it's like this stupid thing that why aren't I really using a real camera? But you bring in gaming guys and or girls, and they know it just seems like a really heavy and powerful controller to them.
This one actually has the pan and tilt speed as a dial, so you can turn and adjust that. I mean, it's so cool. Yeah. So I mean, it's about that deceleration, because you don't want that abrupt. It's kind of like in After Effects, the ease in, ease out. You want that deceleration to be smooth and not this, because it's jarring to the viewer.
Which one is that guy? Who makes that?
This one's a Bird Dog, and I could send this one. This is our demo unit. I've been playing with it at home, but it's meant to go out. So if you want it, just raise your hand and I'll send it over to you with the 30x camera.
Brian, and then Neil.
Well, I just noticed yesterday Bird Dog has a promo on right now. If you buy 3 of the P200s, they'll give you that controller for free. And then they also have a comm software that integrates with the whole thing. So it's an interesting ecosystem.
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
Sorry. Yeah, two things. One, if you're gonna go broadcast cameras, make sure to always check your back focus before you go live. And two, touching on the PTZs, we have been using in some of our auditoriums EpiPen systems that have great quality images, and they've got some great recorders that can also live stream as well as back up to the cloud with custom RTMP destinations and stuff like that. So they've kind of got a all-in-one.
Maybe they've got.
It's very modular, but it's an all-in-one place to go for your modularity.
Hopefully,
EpiPen.
EpiPen.
Thank you, FFN, not EpiPen.
Yeah, I was going to say this is weird.
Hopefully they've gotten better. I have to admit the scars that I have of using EpiPen are so they're all the way to the bone for me. Like I don't think I could. I just get angry thinking about them, But that was a decade ago, So they've probably gotten better, but I can't get over all the problems that they had in the early days. Stuart?
I realized there was one other camera I could suggest, but I need to know from Jeff, what color space are you working in?
Just 709.
Don't know enough to answer that question.
Then 709.
If it's 709, there is a mode on the Scion that will do an ENG look, and it has HDMI outputs. And I can get an adapter from Rare Adapters that will put an ENG lens on it.
Isn't that camera discontinued?
Yeah, but you can pick them up secondhand, and you want to bring the budget down.
He's got 50 in a warehouse. He's trying to offload these from the truck.
Oh, I wish I had 50.
All right.
What I could do with 50 of them.
Next question.
That was fun. And so is this. Hugo in Portugal. I love the way you think, Hugo. Would 10 Apple HomePod Minis be a cool system to use for Atomos?
I think that we have established that the Minis may not do it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it would be amazing if they do. I mean, Sonos is sort of leaning towards that direction already with their surround system.
Right.
Not Atmos. Well, their soundbar does Atmos, but the satellites, their individual speakers, can be used as the side or rear surrounds. But it wouldn't take much to use them as high channels as well. So it'd be great if Apple allows the Minis to be used as.
How many speakers are in a Mini? It's like got 4 little tiny drivers in it. Yeah. It's got multiple, I know.
That would be
the regular HomePods have 7.
The thing is that the way that those work, you probably, if Apple does that, you probably wouldn't have to calibrate it. You probably all the speakers would be able to just talk to each other and figure out what they should sound like in that space. They probably wouldn't need anything else to do it. They would just automatically
plug and play.
Make your space work. It'd be kind of cool. Next question.
John Idelson from the panel in Monterey. Hi, John says, has anyone set up a MIDI board to control the audio mixer at the ATEM Mini Pro?
No one's done it. I'm pretty sure
I wish
it works.
Victor were here.
Has Victor done it?
I mean, he's played around with it.
Have you? So John, have you done it? Have you played with the controller? You have one. You just haven't.
Yeah. I have it. I'm going to try to put it in. I saw a YouTube video from 2 years ago, and I thought I'd see if anybody here has done it.
Yeah, I haven't done it. Neil?
One of my coworkers is actually playing around. Just a second, honey. I'm very sorry. I don't have another.
We'd rather talk to her.
Yeah. She had a suggestion for me. Why did you put her away?
Sorry. One of my coworkers is actually playing around with an Elgato Stream Deck to actually control some of his the functions for some of our upcoming broadcasts. So he'll be able to use different applications and combined with the Stream Deck to program custom MIDI functions to work with that. So it is something you can do. It's just
a lot of Stream Deck can do it, but I love sliders. I'm an analog cowboy in a digital world. I mean, that's the problem.
And Neil, by the way, it's not the first time. I mean, Guy's children run through the back of his set all the time. So we love kids.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, just to kind of jump on that same notion, AV Tech Talks had an episode this last Monday where they showed 2 QL1s and the faders moving. So one guy was remotely in New York and the other guy was in Canada, and he was live on Zoom pushing it up, and you could see the one in Canada move. And I was like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing ever. So it's coming. I can't wait for the future to see. this remote operation where we're moving things in another part of the country. It's going to be
I'm trying to find the, I can't remember. I want to say it's the BR. Let's see. Yeah, we had a controller that Behringer made, and it looks a little like the X Touch, but it's not the X Touch. It was like a little blue. It was something 1000, I think, but
It's
it
like
was
a cooler version of the Mackie Mackie fader thing.
But it's a BR. I want to say I know I'm getting it caught up in something, but it's a Behringer MIDI controller. Maybe I can MIDI. Let's see.
Didn't
that we
Chris
used to
Fenrick
use.
have something like that on the that he showed on the show? Fenrick was using.
Oh, here it is. The BR. It's the BCR 2000. So the BCR 2000. I believe maybe it's the BCR. It's not the BCR 2000. Maybe it's the 1000. Hold on. The
BCF 2000.
Yeah, Jeff.
Does it have faders?
Yeah, it had faders. Hold on. There was one with faders and one without. Yeah, there we go. Hold on. The BCF. Yeah, we used to use the BCF 2000 as a controller for Hangouts. So we used the plugins for Hangouts to we attach the volume of each person to the BCF 2000, and then we also use the buttons to basically sticky click them. So you could click on them to edit. So with this piece of hardware, Google wanted to see what we were doing and how we were doing it, and we would never show them, but we had it all tied together. And so you could sit there and just run a show, and you could just be cutting between the people, and also affecting their audio live with that controller, tied in, and it was super powerful. And you could cut a much tighter show than and there was this interaction. We had a bunch of other tools that we built into it that were related, but yeah, you can go a long way with a hardware controller.
The model I want to do here is using a Stream Deck for camera selection and feeding graphics, and using this for the audio for a ports project.
If I bet you could, with a little bit of coding, you could tie that BCF 2000 so that you could cut the cameras and do the audio at the same time. Just saying.
You can absolutely do that. It's MIDI mode, and the video you saw from 2 years ago is absolutely correct.
Yeah. Next question.
Mike Henderson of Chicago. Is it Chicago? I looked around. Colorado. There we go. Any issues building out a QLab show on one machine and then running the show on a second machine? Anything to look out for?
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think you just have to ensure that, of course, you have all the media that you're playing back linked up in the new machine. So all the video that you're playing back, if you're playing back audio, make sure all the media is linked up, and also you have to redo your display surfaces. So make sure you're going out through the proper HDMI or HDMI output, or if you're using a Blackmagic card, you're going out through that proper output. And same deal with your audio I/O.
Yep. Next question.
Brian Anderson from the panel, Silver Springs, Maryland. Does anyone here have any thoughts about the Sony spatial reality display use cases, and do we need it for anything?
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
I want to tinker with one so bad. That is all. I just want one to play with it. I want it for a few weeks. That's all I can say. It looks really cool.
Can you outline what it does? I'm actually not that familiar with it.
Basically, it's a monitor that, depending on your view and how you're viewing it, it will actually recreate the three. You're looking at a different angle of a three-dimensional image that's projected in front of you. So as I'm looking at this table and I'm looking down, I can now see underneath my microphone. And now I'm looking at above my microphone. So depending on where and how you look at it and the reflectors built onto it, it's physically changing the optical illusion of how you can view a 3D model in a 2D space.
Yeah,
So
it's like a holographic display, and it's got actually lenses built into the display, and it tracks your eyes and stuff. So it's fascinating.
I think it'll be really popular until AR hits. Like it'll be like, yeah, this is great. Okay, we're done. So I think that's the I think that but in the meantime, there's probably a year or two at least of playing with it that would be useful. I find that I don't need, like, on a screen, the ability to do this. To Neil's point, I'd love to play with it, but I actually don't like doing this part. I like having a monitor. I like being able to grab something and rotate it around. I don't like doing the moving part. Doesn't work for me. I will say that I did a bunch of AR. I've been doing a bunch of AR tests with my phone, and where I build 3D objects and I put them back into a scene in my living room that are at scale, and it is different. I have some statues that I shot in Cambodia, and them sitting in your living room at full scale is interesting. Like you get a different feel for it than you would as a little object that you're rotating around in front of you. So I do think that there is a reason to walk around something, but I think that for little objects on a little screen, I don't know if I would go down that path. Anyway, next question.
Neil Goldstein from here in the panel in Tel Aviv. And he has a little warning out, semi-morbid, but a real question. I attended a virtual funeral recently. The camera they were using was automatically exposing for the sun in the background, and everyone who was giving a speech was in complete darkness. Could there be a market for educating funeral homes about basic cinematography?
There's actually, interestingly enough, where was I was in Sydney, Australia, talking. There was someone that I met with there that they specialize in it as a service, and that's really the way to do it. Is not for funeral homes to learn how to do this. It's to hire a service that does it for them. That standardizes it across. Every funeral home trying to figure this out doesn't make sense. And what he did is he had obviously the possibility of an overhead camera, and then a camera for speeches, and then a wide camera return. But he did it all remotely. So he would log into this is, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 years ago, but he would log into he'd see the feeds remotely coming back to him. And there was a handful of people that would do it for the number of funeral homes, and they would cut the whole show and stream it, and it could be done as a private viewing, so it's registered and you can get invited to it, and you have good audio and good video, but it was a centralized service, and he had the same thing that he would install in each funeral home. And he's way ahead of his time. I can't remember. I apologize if he's watching, because I can't remember. I remember having the conversation. I don't remember all the bits and pieces, but he it was a genius thing. He's way ahead of his time, and he's probably really wealthy right now, as far as figuring that out. But that's the way to do it.
Production out of a van. The van pulls up at the
no van.
No van.
It's all no. He literally it all phones home. It's from his office. It was a remote connection to the funeral home over IP.
Oh, the funeral home. I was thinking gravesite. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
We were actually at a gravesite. That's why I was asking for this. So,
I got it.
Yeah, we were outside at a gravesite, which just made it very
harder.
Difficult. Yeah, I felt like I was watching a AOL video from like the late 1990s. Yeah. It was just not
just somebody
good.
who knows to put the sun behind the camera operator instead.
It is a bit morbid, but we're not afraid of that here. But what I will say is that you could probably go around right now and, because of the current situation, sell it as a service and have it be something that's really useful. I know that my limited experience with OBS was actually I figured out how to use OBS, and I sent a bunch of gear to when my grandmother passed, and my sister ran the live stream to YouTube so the rest of the family could watch it. So it's a very useful thing to do. It's just a matter of the tools. Again, when you have a bunch of people that haven't done it, it's it's just hard to do well. Mickey, and then Sky, and then Stuart.
Yeah, just wanted to add, like, this in a way goes back to what we were talking about with Doug Ferguson. Was it yesterday or a couple of days ago? Like, this, when will quality matter? It's always mattered. It's just like if people don't raise their voice and say, like, we want better quality, or if for example, in this case, the funeral home hasn't experienced sending out better quality, like they won't see the point in stepping up their game. Like, if they find competition and they actually start losing business because another funeral home could, stream out much better quality, then they might start to consider it. So it's, perceived value for them.
Yeah. And usually for them, it's an extra thing that it's an option, right? That you can add to your funeral. It's another revenue chain. Go ahead, Sky, and then Stuart.
Well, as you were speaking, I just came from a memorial yesterday, and then we had one in our church, which was a completely different experience, much more managed. But yesterday was very simple because in that house of worship, they already had the full infrastructure. But as you're talking about your guy from his home, was he remoting into multiple
Yeah.
facilities?
Yeah.
And so they were just using him as the
He
control
did all of
desk.
it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So he would
Yeah.
install a thing in their
Mhm.
facilities, and then that's an interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Stuart, I'm not sure if it's a business I would want to be in. I mean, personally, I think it would be hard to do that every day. But I think that I think it's a good business. I just don't know if I mentally would want to be able to
Let somebody
do that.
else manage it, and I could help
Right. Yeah.
facilitate it. Yeah.
Yep. Stuart.
Back when I was doing wedding videos, I actually did shoot several funerals. So I'd actually shot weddings and funerals for a couple of families. Yes, it's a
Four
little
weddings?
bit morbid. Yes, you have to
A
be.
funeral?
No, I did something like 400 weddings
Yeah,
in a
I'm just
period of
kidding, I'm
about
just
3.5 years, and it kills your sense of romance. Forget about it.
Uh-uh.
But anyway, the point I was getting to is what that actually sounds like is that Neil's on the point there. It's the cinematography of the person with the camera, but the same people who are doing the photography and cinematography out at the parks for a wedding will already have those skills for doing it at the gravesite. The one thing I do question about inside the funeral homes, like a lot of the local ones here have a IP-based camera or a security camera, and that's all they will allow inside because they want something respectful. They don't want the camera getting in the way. But there are controls for those sorts of cameras on the web servers for those cameras to avoid that sort of problem.
You go ahead, Chris, and then Bill. Oh, you can't hear you, Chris. You're nope. Okay. All right, Bill.
I was just going to note because we had a funeral not terribly long ago in the family, and I did some research. I just want to warn you, in America, that is a very vertical thing now. I guess there's one big player, Service Corporation of America, that has bought up most of the funeral homes in the U.S. So if you don't get into being,
But if you do get
allowed
in,
to do that-
it's big business.
if you do get in, you're the king,
Yep,
right
exactly.
there.
Okay. Yep.
But if
Go ahead,
not,
Chris.
it's hard to go to the locals.
Yep, Chris.
I got it to work. I was going to remind everybody that when it comes to quality, that at least in the United States, people lived with VHS for the better part of 30 years. And so the thing that's I find the most interesting about you, Mr. Lindsay, is your ability to sell people up to the quality level that you draw as the minimum. I'd love to just drill down on that technique that you do. I could do an hour interview with you just about how you do that, because I think that obviously everybody likes it, but to get the people with the money to say, okay, how much is this going to cost me? I find that fascinating.
Well, I think that a lot of times I give people lots of choices. Like it's not like, oh, you have to do it this way or whatever. Now, I have some minimum requirements now because I'm just so busy. So, like, if we can't send a kit out for everybody that's in a Zoom that we're working on, to me that tells me where the client is related to the project, and I just don't do the project. I'm not available for that. Because we just and then the chain reaction there is that people see our events and they look different than everybody else's event because everybody's got a kit. We've spent time with every speaker, their audio and their video work. The event is relatively smooth, and so what it does is it has the people who care. There'll be 3,000 people watching, and there'll be 4 of them that go, "Wow, I need that for my next event," and then you get 4 calls, and then and so what happens is it's not a matter of everybody noticing it, because you're absolutely right that most people don't. What you're trying to do is when you just produce that, and then the other thing that we do a lot of is I do a lot of testing. So when I have any downtime, I'm trying to figure out how to do the next big thing, the next great whatever. And so what happens is that when a client says, I'm thinking about this, I go, I just did that. And this is, let me show you an example of what that would look like. And so the hardest part is people wait for a client to ask them to do it before they do it. And I tend to spend into R&D to figure out how I'm going to do it. And also to test it in my head so that I actually could say that I could do it. That's a lot of it is getting into that process, but so much of doing this is examples. Like you cannot sell people on, some people can, but most people cannot sell people on just pure smoke. Where you talk about something. So
I call it the Geldof.
Yeah.
Bob Geldof method.
Yeah. The Bob Geldof, but you have to have, big. It's going to be, but I think that the big thing is that a lot of times what we do is we show people, you want to show people as often as you can. So I'm constantly doing, like I was shooting HDR tests. Like I have stuff from 2 years ago, I think, of HDR tests that I was shooting in Cambodia and Singapore. And whenever I was traveling, I was shooting that stuff and I was coming back and figuring it out in Resolve. And I was doing, like bits and pieces of it because I know that it's coming, and we were doing 4 years ago, we were doing HDR tests when the hardware, the hardware didn't even understand what it was looking at, and we were streaming it out to Apple. We wrote an app for Apple TV that would show it up, and then we, and it was all a boondoggle. We lost so much time working on that, but then people knew that we had been, the rough examples. People knew that they might be somewhere in the ballpark. No one else is 2 years ago, and so then I got to do a bunch of other stuff, and then you get called for, so you look at the areas that you think are going to be big, and so I tend to be pretty good at knowing what's coming, I'm pretty good at like going, this is going to be a model, right? And so vision, I looked at HDR and vision and Atmos and said, well, that's something I want to kind of work towards. The other things that I'm working towards is I still think that educational content is going to be a massive, massive market because the number, and then the last thing I was going to say is AR. Because it's just going to be like the tests that I'm doing with AR that I've been doing for the last 10 years. An annotated lifestyle is quite a thing. Like when everything's annotated and things are added and everything else, it is like, it is like looking into the sun when you think about what can be done there. And we are so not even on the ballpark yet.
Fight Club.
What?
It's like that IKEA scene in Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I call that, you say about looking to the future, I call that looking over the fence.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between, one of the differences between me and you is when I look over the fence, I'm usually looking at what Alex Lindsay's doing. And you're looking over a fence I don't even see. So.
Yeah, it's just connecting. I'm tempted. So there is a secret. So there's a book I grew up with, called is written by a scientist who became very religious named Emanuel Swedenborg, and it's called Heaven and Hell. And all I'm doing is closing the gap, with that book. So that's all I've done for 30 years. I can see it. I can see 100 miles out, because all it is just, you just close the gap to heaven and you solve it. What he describes 200 years ago, so all you gotta do is close the gap. So anyway, so everything that I build, everything I do, it's all built on that book that I grew up with. So I grew up in that that religion, and so anyway, so that's I was reading it years ago and reading a new kind of science at the same time, and something kind of fused, and I was also working on a bunch of stuff, and so all I'm doing is closing the gap, and so everything I work on is just based on half of that book. So the other half I try to avoid. Anyway, Stuart.
Being technical and artistic, I absolutely suck at marketing myself. So I would absolutely love for Chris Fenwick to put in the second hour suggestions an interview with Alex on marketing and upselling and getting more clients.
Here's the funny thing is that I don't have any. I don't like. I try to explain to people like when I got even hired, for at 090 Media, I explained I don't do sales and I don't do marketing. I don't do that. Like what I do is I serve the market that I'm in. I serve it. My secrets are very simple in that sense that I look at the market and I serve like this. What we're doing here is me serving the market that I'm interested in. I don't have any outcome that needs to come out of this, but I know that when I produce a use inside of that industry, that things come out the other end, and you just know that there's a reaction to that all the time. And I've been doing that. I mean, I've been doing that my whole life. You look at the thing you're interested in, then you just start to help where find a way to. I walked into a radio station when I wanted to get into radio. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't have a resume. I literally walked into an alternative rock radio station because I really liked alternative rock. And I said, I love alternative rock and I'll sweep the floors for free. Like that's how I just got in. I just picked it up and I started sweeping the floors. And before you knew it, I reorganized their music library. And then I wrote an application that ran the radio station. And then they said, oh, your voice is pretty good. Why don't can you do some commercials for us? And then I did those. And then I had the Saturday morning show. And then I had the morning show. And then I had music director. And then I had assistant program director. And I did that in about 18 months, and so, but what it came down to is being, I'm interested in that thing and I almost always start for free. It's, as Fenwick has repeated that I said somewhere, free is the straw that drank 1,000 milkshakes. I come in, I look for something that I want to get into and I don't want money to be the thing that stops me from getting there, and so I ruthlessly go in and try to figure out how to make that, get into that market because I'm interested in it. But then it always turns into something. It turns into, this is going to actually cost money to do it. So then you start charging for it, because you can't do it for free. I'll do things for free until I can't, and not because, it's not trying to turn it. It's just like, okay, now I have to charge real money because it's a real project. And then anyway, and so there's a lot of what I call primes that I think about a lot. Like a couple of them are, the one that I've mentioned before, which is that action always occurs when possibility is greater than circumstance. When I'm talking to a client, when I'm talking to anyone about something, what I'm listening for are their circumstances and their possibilities. What do they need and what is stopping them? And so what, and what can I do about that? So can I lower the circumstance or can I increase the possibility, for what they're doing? But I don't, in a conversation, you almost always, if you ever get into a meeting with me, you'll always notice that Shannon or somebody else is always in the meeting because they're taking notes. It's always dangerous for me to be in meetings I'm not as good if I'm by myself because I have to type down what people say, because when I have a producer in the room that knows me, so like Shannon Cooper, who shows up here every once in a while, has been in thousands of meetings with me. She knows the information that I need to get out of the meeting. And when I'm in a meeting, I'm totally present. I can't remember even what I said. Like when she's in the meeting or another producer's in the meeting, I won't even remember what I said in the meeting. Like I'm just like completely talking to the client. I'm listening for what they need. I'm trying to figure out how to solve it. And then I come out and I said, what did we agree to? Because what did I say we were going to do? Because there's no plan. There's just dancing with the conversation of what do they need and how do I solve it? And we're just trying to figure it out. And it's a creative process with the client that I'm just trying to figure it out. I don't have something in the back of my head that I'm going to try to sell them this many things, or I'm trying to figure this out. I'm just trying to solve the problem. And to the downside of that is it also tends to be everything I do tends to be bespoke because of that, which makes it really hard on a company. It makes it very hard to scale, because when I talk to a client, I will make every show the document they get for the show, the plan, the team, everything else evolves, and it's never the same. It always just is. I reformulate it almost from scratch for almost every job, because that's the solution for that job, and I tend not to pipeline things very well. So I talk about pipelining, but I just never actually get to it. Because it just looks different to me the next time I see it. This show is different to me every day, and so we've been doing hundreds of these, and then, the other thing that I do a lot is what I tend to call inverting value. How do I find a way that I can give you something that's really valuable to you while you give me something that's not as valuable to you, but is valuable to me? So I invert that value. And so, for instance, United might have a lot of seats that they're not using, and I need to get people around. How do I make a trade with United? I trade a lot, how do I trade something where, we'll give you PR, which is valuable to you. The seats aren't as valuable as the PR. And so you figure out ways to, as a little, cash is what you want to do when you want it to be modular, when you want it to not be, you basically what you want to do when you get good at inverting value, the circle keeps on turning. When the problem with cash most of the time is it closes it off. It just says, okay, we're done with that cycle. When you always keep on giving more than what someone put into it, it just keeps on turning that clip. And when you pay someone, you've closed it. So what you try to do is constantly be, injecting value into that is an injection of something that you can afford to give. And then you're hopefully getting something back that is more valuable to you. And, and it's just kind of a way to kind of turn. And anyway, this is kind of the way I tend to think about things, if that helps. I don't know if it helps. It's a very complicated little bramble in my head of how I do this. But anyway, and I admit that I try to pull it out of explaining how I'm doing it. When I'm doing it, I'm not thinking about it at all. Like I don't read any books about it or how to do any of this stuff. I work on things that I'm passionate about, and I figure out how to make them work. And I get interested in something, and I just start moving that direction, and things tend to happen, but I also build a lot of really great relationships. I've got a bunch of good relationships here. But I'm pretty careful about those as well. I think that takes years to develop. But it's easy to be a one-person show, but the more you can work on teams and the more you can have great experiences with teams, the more the work comes because, people know that you're easy to work with and so on and so forth. Go ahead, Sky, and then Jason.
I've used the word liminal before. It's that being in the moment. And I've, again, working with Graham over the last, trying to do a documentary on his life. There's something about the component of his wife being his producer, and that he was allowed by her to only trust her words. And so he would be physically graded A, B, C, D at the end of every show. So he could be in the moment, that liminal space, as you were talking about. And consequently, I believe that was his secret. And that's what everybody was attracted to, was his untethered, to the point that in the 1800 shows he did, they only did a second take once. There was never a second take.
Wow. It's quite a thing.
He completely trusted, and that is why in working with him now, he's actually watching the things that we're doing, and it's a different technique and a different technology, and his spontaneity is much more guarded and kind of less fun.
Good, Jason, Jason and Neil.
Yeah, I think our approaches to this, Alex, are bizarrely similar. I have never thought of myself as a salesperson, and I'm not in any way aware of how I do what I do. I'm aware that I've managed to do it for well over a decade, and it scares me because I don't think of myself as a sales guy. I certainly never learned any of it in business school because I hated all the marketing and all the sales and how to close and all that stuff. You speak from your heart, and you do what you say you're going to do, and that's strangely all it takes to inspire people.
Neil?
Yeah, based on some of what you touched on, I'm wondering, when you look at the director assistant director relationship or the lighting designer and assistant lighting designer relationship, when you're on location on production, do you have a specific someone that you trust as your second set of eyes and opinion when going through stuff?
Essentially, I hire people that I trust that I can hand it off to. Almost everybody on the team. like it's something that I almost handpick almost every, and when I don't handpick, I usually pay for it, but I handpick my teams, pretty carefully of, and I'm constantly evolving those teams too. Like, oh, that might not be the right job for them. Maybe I put that person in a place that they didn't belong for that specific job. But generally my teams then kind of solidify. So like, for instance, I'll listen to stuff, but obviously Brian Maddox works on a lot of my live stuff. And Brian, I just know that Brian's going to he knows we've worked together for so long that I also just trust him for audio. I don't think about the audio, chain. I know that it's going to be managed correctly. Now I may listen to it and go, hey, Brian, I think that there's too much of this or too much of that. And then he'll go make that change. But I don't, we both know each other well enough to do that. And then like, when Maurer, Kevin Maurer is doing my TDing and everything else, or Nate Hill, who's been on here in the early days. With those guys, I just know that they're thinking about 8 things that I didn't think about, and if I get, someone like Mickey to do the audio or Fenwick to do to do cutting, I know I can hand it off and it's just going to go. It goes away for me. Like they're thinking about more things than I am. And that's what I'm always trying to do is build a team where each individual, other than maybe the PAs and even the PAs to some degree, but each individual knows their job better than I do and is thinking about 10 things that I'm not thinking about to make it refined. And that's what I'm looking for in every team, and that's what when I'm filling teams out, I want every person in their individual vertical to be smarter than me, and then, a big part of my job is just organizing great teams, that are that are dependable, that work hard, that will do whatever it takes to get it done, and that are thinking about those things in a more technical way, and as we get ready for some of the stuff we're building up for next, we're just going to have, they're putting together some very technical teams, to get this stuff done. And that makes life, and what I will say is I grew to that. I didn't always do that. For a long time, I had it like everybody's my fingers, like I'm just going to tell you what to do and you're all going to do it. And I'll just, and it's so like overwhelming because you have to pay attention to everything, and it just, you can't produce good work that way. You have to, fill your teams with, really, really technical people in their own individual verticals. And then if you do it right, and I don't always do it right, I make my mistakes. When you do it right, I spend most of my time picking it, just looking at things and trying to figure out how the overall flow goes and looking at, now, a lot of times I have to do it at least once or twice because that gets it in my head. Like I understand, I can have a useful conversation with the person. If I'm hands-on on it, on the first time we do something hard, I absorb that knowledge. I now have it operational in my head. Am I as good as someone else will be to do it? No, but I can have a useful conversation with them and I know what to look for. So then that's where my R&D projects come and so on and so forth. But building a really, really strong team, and you're constantly trying to, in the same way you're trying to evolve what you're doing, you're trying to evolve your, that team to do it. And, one of the ways that I do that is, when we needed to get union teams, I just offered the union, hey, I'll do training for you for free. Now, for the union, that was an incredible opportunity. We do tons of live work. We're going to show a bunch of your newer union members how to do it. For me, number one is I know that I train them, so I know that they're going to know how to do it the way I do it. Number two is, I could pick people out. So then I had, I could just see the people I can just look at how they approach things and whether they're, and I can make a decision. Out of 40 people, there might be 6 or 8 people that I would go, oh, I want to put them on must-haves the next time I'm working in Moscone, and so I, I'm constantly trying to build teams. I mean, one of the many reasons that I built this group, that I started this was so that, I know that there is potentially an enormous amount of work coming in the areas of AR and e-learning and everything else. And I'm identifying teams, like that's the Discord and the panel and everything else is me trying to figure out, how do we cobble together these global teams that can get stuff done. I don't know enough people to do that, and so and in return, the thing that I'm providing is hopefully a place where a lot of people are learning they're getting all of it, and they can all interact with each other. They can all hire each other. It's not just for me. It's for we all need this to find each other and find and learn faster. And so I get to learn every day. I learn a lot from this group of everything from little tips to other organizational things and everything else, and how to have a meeting work. To this infrastructure that we're building. I feel like what we're building here in itself is something that more companies should do, more organizations should do. And I'm, figuring out a way to turn it into, we've kind of figured out a way to turn it into some kind of model, that works. And there's lots of pieces that could still be added, but anyway, so this community that we're building is kind of a key piece for all of us, to use the way I'm using it, which is to get to know other people and be part of that process. Go ahead, Stuart.
You have developed a very safe sandbox.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuart?
I'm
John?
just thinking for any of the attendees who are thinking about being panelists, perhaps you should come in thinking that this is the 200 odd day of job interviews with Alex Lindsay.
Well, and what I would say is it's job interviews with everyone, like how you present yourself. I look at the progression of this as, you join, you might watch from a distance, you might listen to it, and so on and so forth. Then in Discord, you're getting to start to know people and you're starting to have a presence. Then you start, joining the panel, and now we're getting to know you. We're getting to know whether, we're getting to know, what you know. We're getting to know how you interact and who you are about things. And so it's not just for me, it's for everybody watching. There's a lot of people that I know are watching this show that are much more influential than I am. so there's a lot of people in there. And so I do think that the progression, if you think that, if you're ready to, if you think you can contribute to the conversation, I do think becoming part of the panel is a advantageous way to do that, to contribute back to the community. It does more than just contribute back to the community. It actually positions you as a leader in that area. Go ahead, John.
Well, back in the days when I was teaching full time, I did a lot of team projects in classes, and I don't know whether it's the experience for people in the panel, but most of the students really resisted doing team projects. There were all the complaints that, I have to do all the work, the team didn't support me. And one student who really hated the projects, we had some required courses that had team projects, but then there were some optional ones, and students know if they had a class for me, they were probably going to be in a team project. And the one student finally came up to me, I just figured out what you want to do with team projects. And I said, what is it? He said, you're trying to teach us how to find smarter and more creative people than we are, but not so much smarter or more creative than they won't work with you.
That's funny. Well, I think that I know we've gotten kind of in a philosophical bent. We had some more time today than we normally do with questions, but the the best thing that you can do oftentimes is just help everyone around you. I mean, the people who are worth helping is, the people who are in front of you, you help them because, you just help, if you just get into a helping mode, but by helping them, they have things that they need to get done that they don't have enough time to do. Anybody who's ahead of you has some of that, where time is a limitation. And so how do you help them with that process? Like an example of Leo wanted to do video, but didn't have time to edit video together for Twit. So I said, I'll do it. I can do the multicam. I had never done multicam before. I pulled an all-nighter to get the multicam out. I had no idea. I screwed it up in like 3 ways from Sunday, and just hacked through it and got it out the first time. Then the second time was faster and everything else. But then it was and even before that, if you look at me showing up on Leo's show, I mean, I was showing up on Screensavers for free. I flew to Canada for free, to just show up on the show. And that helped add programming to what Leo was doing. And that's been advantageous for me for a long time. And it was, but the other thing is that you also want to help the people behind you, the people who are in one way or another. They might be ahead of you in some places, but the people who are coming up behind you, because you never know where they're going to end up. There's, Nick Jushishin was a I think a network administrator or a database administrator or something when he joined the Pixel Corps, and now he's head of visual effects at Drexel, and there's lots of, there's folks that work in a lot of companies that started in the Pixel Corps, and they were learning, on how to do those things. And so I think that when you are able to, and the people that aren't worth helping, because they're difficult or they're, not trustworthy, or there's a whole bunch of other things, then you don't do anything to them. You just don't go down that path. But for the people who are good, and whatever, however you want to say that, but are useful and that you want to be around it, you want to figure out a way to help them. It's, and that, again, that is more of my marketing than anything else. I don't really do, I barely understand advertising. To me, it's all relationship marketing, content marketing, like you put stuff, then I put stuff out, like we're putting this out, and I'll put out more stuff in the fall. And I've put out content that, again, serves that market for free. And those are the things that's how you prime the pump. And then you just wait for, if you're making a difference in the world, it tends to solve itself. I don't have a lot of tips and tricks in there as much as just that kind of stuff has worked for most of my life. Sky?
Chris Fenwick, you win. You win the best question of the day. You lit that fire, brother. You lit Alex up. Look at all the hands that. So thank you for everything. And
I was purposely not following up, but if it were a real interview, this would go on for an easy hour.
Well, I don't disagree, but again, you sneak up behind him, and all of a sudden it just happens, and that's who this bear in this woods is. So do you follow Seth Godin at all, Alex?
I don't know.
You have very similar philosophies and solving a problem and not trying to just repeat and do something that's going to serve somebody else just serve the system. So I read
remarkably little. I definitely don't. I'm not very well read. It's not like I read a lot of No,
he does a lot of podcasting. But he's very succinct. And
there's the worst part is I don't listen to very many podcasts either. My brain has a tendency to overheat, so I get headaches. So if I get too many, when I read a book and it starts to like a lot of these books about stuff that my brain will start to speed up because I'm reading it, and it starts to actually become painful for me. So I tend to limit my input a lot just because I.
Do you find you want to argue with the book, Alex?
No, it's not that. I sometimes want to argue with the book, but I don't read that many books like Malcolm Gladwell. I read parts of it and then I go, oh my gosh, and then I just turn it off. But I do find, there are books that I enjoy. I like philosophical books on, I really am into tradesmanship, or craftsmanship. So I read a lot of books on, shop class for soulcraft and things like that, of connecting the doingness to the thinking part is stuff that I tend to listen to. But I that's about it. And I do that usually when I'm making SDI cables for some reason. I'm doing something and I'm listening to it. It's kind of like what I do. I listen if I'm building cables or soldering.
You're knitting.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to keep your hands busy.
All right, let's finish the last couple questions and then we'll be done for the day. Go ahead, next question.
Hey, James Babbitt of San Diego. Hi, Alex. Is there interest in having a second hour discussing home theater, Dolby Atmos, and Dolby Vision, maybe with Scott Wilkinson as a guest?
I pinged Scott and he hasn't responded, so I'll ping him again and we'll see. But we'll definitely be talking about Vision and Atmos more production wise, and then we'll work on getting other stuff in there. And first we'll do it among ourselves, and then we'll try to bring some experts in. Next question. No, go ahead, Mickey.
Oh, Scott and Robert would be amazing.
I pinged both of them, and I still haven't gotten. I didn't get any response, so I'll ping them again. All right, next question.
Ranjan Shadil of Los Angeles says, is the QLab automation a proper starter program, or would you recommend a different program for introduction?
I would just start with what you want to use. I mean, I wouldn't try to do something in between QLab. If you want to do QLab, just figure it out. We have a bunch of people here that use it, so this is a good space to do it. Get QLab and then play with it and ask questions here, because we've got a bunch of people that are digging into it here, especially when you see Victor Victor's digging pretty deep into QLab, and then also Lauren's. So Lauren's and Victor are probably in our group, probably the most. Lauren's being, I mean, he does tons of it, and then Victor's kind of from the music piece of it. Those are the two that you want to look for. If you see them in the panel, that's the time to ask questions about QLab, and definitely ask it in Discord as well. Next question.
And it's our last one from today from Tony Mobley, often in the panel. Can the panelists share their lighting chain? Just curious about lighting chain updates.
You want to go ahead, Jason?
I use, in fact, all of the lighting because it was too hot and too heavy. I've replaced all of the lighting that you see here with Elgato lighting. So I've got two larger panels on either side and a ring light, and it's beautiful and it's easy and it's light and it's cheap.
Bill?
So my thing is there are two of these little newer panels, and the reason I have two relatively small but wide panels is because my main monitor is large and I can't block them with some larger softbox in front of me. Then I have two Dracast panels up there, which are designed to light the background, and when we're using this as just an office, they light the back wall up and make that good. And then there's two little tiny newer 160s, old ones that I'm using as a very light rim light to give me a little separation in the shot, but they're down very low and hardly make a difference. So it's kind of two in front, two lighting up the background, and then a little tiny rim light.
For some reason, every time you do that wide shot, I'm like, holy smokes, he's got a lot of stuff. Like I just think of you in a little room. Like there's a picture. My mental picture of you is in this little room, and maybe it's because you started with the sound booth, and then when you cut to this, I'm like, wow, that's a lot more than I expected. So it's anyways. Go ahead,
I want to
Stuart.
get back out to the booth. I love the booth, and I need to get back there more.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm not going to cut to it, but there is a key light over there, which is a domestic LED with a coffee can used, or as in the coffee tin with the end cut off, used as a snoot. There is a rim light back there, so that's key and rim. And again, another coffee can as a snoot. And there's a big fill light in front of me. So it's key, rim, fill, done.
That's great.
Oh, and making sure there's no daylight by being up in the middle of the night.
Go ahead, Sky.
Can't. Too many fingers, not enough hands. So yes, I just have the, what is it, Guy? 21 inch ring light, and then just some overhead cans coming out of the ceiling. But it's just mounted right over, just above currently the laptop.
John?
We're doing a portable setup for the parked interpreters, and I found this, which is a folding ring light.
Interesting.
Wow.
So and with it, hit my microphone, and they bring a whiteboard, so the light goes up. We put the board behind that, and then another board to play with the sun. So we'll see how this works. It was inexpensive, and we use portable USB power packs on it.
Good. And Guy?
Yeah, I kind of moved things around a little bit. Let me see if I can cut to one. So I got this auto pull now, and it's going all the way up to the ceiling. So it makes it so that people don't trip because, again, we're in the hallway. But ring light, and then there's you guys. And then behind me, I can get it. There's a Lytra Studio up there on a triad orbit. And then there's the NDI camera, and then there's a background.
So, Guy, can you use that studio light behind you and go to the fire engine, police engine effect?
Yeah, I can actually. And then there's another prismatic spectra down there, and then the little Lytra MC right here, which is kind of like an uplight that goes underneath. And the overall effect is that. So key light. Fill light.
Your kids appreciate how cool of a dad you are.
Well, it's funny when I let them attend school sitting here. So they'll come in. They look a little different than the rest of their classmates, and they sit in this seat. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Guy, how much weight can the auto pull hold? I'm getting ready to buy 2 of those things.
I'm not sure. It depends on where you're putting the load at and how you're hanging things off of it. Because I mean, it'll go up to 12.1 feet. Because I know I have Sir Mix-a-Lot coming to pick one up today for his studio because he's going to hang a camera over his mixer, and he was concerned about that same thing. So he's using a little Manfrotto 1/4-20 arm. I don't know if you've seen those cool. It's called an RC244 is the model number, but it's like a pneumatic magic arm where you can really put some heavy weight on it. But how heavy are you looking to go?
I've got 2 ICANN DMX controlled LED panels, and they're pretty heavy.
Yeah, it would handle. Those are only a couple pounds.
No, they're more than that. I would say 4 or 5 pounds.
Oh yeah, no problem. I mean, you can. I've built backdrop support kits off of these things, so you get 2 of them, and then you can do one across. And we've hung some heavy stuff. Hoping that Sky and Chris are going to town with the
Well,
the disco
John
lights.
This is the app that comes with the ring light.
Yeah,
has some
great.
fun things.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to look at this, but
I didn't realize yours was
goalpost.
practical. Mine was a digital effect.
You can goalpost them as well. Let me see if I can give you that shot. You can see there's a cross set of auto poles up there. These are the ones that hold my sound baffling up at the ceiling. Wow, it's kind of weird angle. But those I have Manfrotto super clamps on top of an auto pole. That's a super clamp right there. And so you can goalpost 2 verticals and then
and I apologize that I'm gonna need to close up today. I got a 9 o'clock that I'm about to be late for. So but there we go. Good questions, and we got through another 2 hours. I answered some questions pretty long. Hopefully that was okay, and it was great hanging out with everybody. And so we will see you tomorrow. It's a nice leisurely week as everyone tries to figure out. I guess evidently there's some election going on that people seem to be pretty attached to. So anyway, so hopefully that'll sort itself out so they can get back to their regular life.
We've got to love your election because it's actually bumped up the Australian dollar to over 70 cents US. Yay!
There we go. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so good. Anyway, thanks for coming. And it's great, always great seeing you guys in the morning, seeing all of you in the morning, both in the attendees and in the panel. And we'll see you tomorrow. All right, take care, everybody.